This is a new series that we're doing called Meet the Team, where we talk to different people on the NOR team about their past projects, things that they love, maybe things that they don't love so much. And joining me today is our CEO, Brooks Brown. People have caught glimpses of some of the cool stuff in your office. Do you have any cool stuff unpacked yet?
I mean, we're mostly unpacked, luckily. It's the big nightmare of moving for us was because it's the first time we've ever hired packers. I've never done that before, but with everything going on and on top of having 2 kids, and it was just too much. So we did that, and they didn't write the names of any of the rooms on the boxes. So that makes unpacking weirdly stressful. No, I got a bunch of I like having random tchotchkes, to say the least. Probably more dear to me is a handful of things. This is just off to the right. This is a voodoo doll for Guybrush Threepwood from Monkey Island 2's remake, which I was fortunate enough to be a part of. There's only, I think, 500 of these ever made, and the story behind them is hilarious, as was a lot of stories from my time at Lucasfilm. I have a lot of just random dumb crap. I have my Carl Matryoshka doll, if you're a fan of Aqua Teen, which I am. Because it opens up, and inside is his skin, his muscles, and then inside of that is his skeleton, and then inside of that is his brain. And of course, inside of all of that, inside of his brain, at the very middle, you have what is ultimately in his brain, which is poop. So
I think that's true of a lot of people.
It's my Carl Matryoshka doll. It's not often I get excited about purchases at Comic-Con, but this was one of my favorites. I like tchotchkes. I'm a sucker for it. I'm a sucker for this stuff.
I am too. Yeah, that's why I have the screen behind me so people can't see all of the stuff in my office. About the voodoo doll, if you thought that it actually worked, who would you put a pin in it for?
I don't know. Not many people these days. These days, I'm a lot less angry than I was. When I used to be a really frustrated person with a lot of things. I had a lot of personal trauma I went through, and on top of that, it kind of gave me a lot of anger that I dealt with over the years, therapy, all that fun stuff. These days, I think mostly it's reserved for. If I had to pick, it would be probably my landlords at this new place.
Or the movers, or IKEA.
Movers, you know what? Everyone's doing their job. The landlords at our new place, my favorite thing is our water spout out back, because everyone has one, is attached to the hot water heater. So figure out that one and figure out how we can ever use it. So we've been waiting to have a plumber come out. So it's things like that I think are more the annoyances, because I'm more worried about my kids than anything. It's funny how we change as we get older. But it's mostly about the kids than anything.
With the kids, what's the biggest surprise for you about fatherhood? What was the thing that you hadn't really expected?
So everyone tells you, like your parents say, or other people, like it changes your life, and it does. I didn't realize how absolutely true that was. And for me, I like to say it's been the most humbling experience, because you watch these little balls of nothing, because they got nothing when they're born, sort of start to coalesce into a person, and you start to realize 2 things. First off, this is a shared experience. We all do this. This is literally all humanity goes through, whatever these kids are going through, at least in some capacity. And then on top of it, you realize your job is to make that better. And that's humbling in the sense of it makes it universal, but also terrifying, because you realize also where, no one's perfect. Your parents weren't perfect. My parents weren't perfect. Their parents weren't perfect. And things carry on. You start to learn a lot about it. We were having dinner the other night, and my son didn't finish it, and he wanted to go to ice cream. And I was like, no, you need to finish everything on your plate. Within a moment, I looked at my wife and went, what the fuck? Where did that come from? That's not a thing I care about. He's not hungry. That's great. I have no idea where that came from. I literally have no idea where some of this stuff comes from.
Because we always hear it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to finish all of this. It's not good. It's not a good thing to do.
But it's been that, and then I think more recently it's been getting and playing video games with my son now that he's old enough. Has been really the treat of
I
life.
wanted to touch about that really quickly, is the challenge that you have now with Mario, because he got really upset that you were killing the bad guys.
Yeah, it's his rule is in Mario, I'm not allowed to kill anyone who has big round eyes because they're friendly. And in Mario, that makes Mario very difficult. Just to mention, it's kind of cool in the sense that it's like a weird speedrun category. I almost want to add, because I'm getting very good at not killing specifically those with big round eyes. But what I've also learned is waiting for him to wait to get to the bosses, because you have to beat bosses to continue in Mario. And I always wait for him to have to run to the restroom, or I go, hey, your mom needs you for a second. I kill the bad guy real quick, and then I make my way through. It's the only option, because he's despondent if I jump on a Goomba. That's the end of the day for us, because he's just he's like, I didn't want them to die. And it's and the last thing I want to say is
really upset.
The last thing you want to do is tell a kid, I have to murder them. I don't know if it's a lesson I want to instill quite yet. Someday you have to shoot these people in the face in this video game, probably, but I'm not sure he's at the age where I want to teach him that murder sometimes is good.
Okay, so in the past, in many interviews, you've talked about how you got into the industry and the different things that you've done, and you've done a lot of cool stuff. You've met a lot of cool people. But about games specifically, what is your favorite game ever? Or is that too much of a Sophie's choice?
It's like asking people their favorite film. I have so many questions, what do you mean around this or that? If I had to pick a desert island game, it would be Dwarf Fortress, because I could play Dwarf Fortress the rest of my life alone and probably never get tired of it. There is something about the way that game always is able to create something that surprises me, makes me smile, makes me concerned, makes me feel something. Despite the horrifying learning curve that is a part of that, and it is, the reality is it's exceptional. Beyond that, I think my Steam profile speaks for itself when I've got 3,500 Dota hours, 2,000 hours in Rust, and beyond that, all the Battlefields, I think, and Left 4 Dead. Those would be my 4, I think, top played games. But I have a 13% game completion rate on Steam, which is not actually that bad, given that I have close to 1,500 games. So I play a lot, and I love a lot of games.
When did you have time to have kids?
Yeah,
was that the day that the electricity went out?
It's everyone's got their thing that makes them relax, and this is my thing. Heather's yoga for some, working out for some, having a drink, whatever it may be. For me, it's literally my zen, is sitting down and actually being able to just disappear inside of a game. My wife, when we moved in, we'd have the TV or console set up, and it was another stress for me. Finally, we got everything set up, and I laid back, and I was playing on my PS5, playing some Death Stranding, and she was just the energy of the house shifted just because I could just get that out and be able to do that. It's my decompression. Yeah,
and you're so high energy that you have to have some kind of pressure valve. I know this.
Yeah, and again, I don't even drink coffee anymore. I'm on 2 cups of Earl Grey a day. And I have to be careful with that second cup. If it's a little late in the day, then I'm up all night.
Okay, so let's talk about what made you want to get into the game industry. I mean, we've talked about what you've done, but do you remember, was there a eureka moment?
That was Monkey Island. It's the reason I have this on my desk, is it's reminding me. And my little brother and we would sit and play the Monkey Island games when I was younger. We played a ton of games, but specifically Monkey Island 2, which is where the voodoo doll comes from. We both just lost ourselves in it so much, and we talked about how we wanted to make this. This is what we wanted to do, and eventually my brother and I both tried, and it's not a thing you can do in Denver, in Colorado. In Colorado had at the time, and I think even the same now, maybe 2 or 3 developers. There's a handful of mobile devs, I think, there now, but it's not it's not a place where you can do that. And so I kind of just had given up, and my brother and I started going to conferences and trying to get hired, but it was Monkey Island that did it. The great beauty and poetry of life is that obviously Lucasfilm and LucasArts did Monkey Island 2, And we both ended up working at LucasArts. He in the sound department doing music and sound effects, and me in the marketing department, and ultimately in the game development department. And when I was in marketing and he in sound, we both got to work on the reboots of Monkey Island 1 and 2, and we both got to be pirates in the Scum Bar on the remake. So I got to actually sit around and go, arr, 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 for a good, I think they did like 5 minutes straight of us making asses, arr, arr, like just whatever noises. It was a blast. And
I'm so glad you guys got to do that together.
Well, and it's
amazing. Is
amazing.
that the only thing that you worked on together?
Oh no! I mean,
with Aaron?
literally every game at LucasArts that he touched, because I worked on everything at Lucas when I was in marketing, every project. So like I joked that I launched 18 games because I did. I did anything that was digital marketing. So I registered all the social media shit. I ran all the social media shit actually up until the Disney sale. It was just me personally, and then on top of that, all the websites, whether building them or helping them run or whatever it may be. I did all of those things, which was its own sort of, 100-hour weeks were common. And so was a lot of drinking, to be perfectly frank. But we worked on almost everything together. The fun part was, because he and I are so opposite, and you know my brother, we're not the same person. We actually started a rumor that we lied about being brothers. And people believe...
You don't even look alike.
Not at all.
You don't look alike at all, no.
Not at all. And so we started a rumor that we weren't really brothers, and a lot of people believed it until our parents visited, obviously, and then it was like, oh shit, they're actually brothers.
But the stuff that you're talking about that you did, that wasn't really game design. And I remember one of my first conversations with you years ago was when I asked you, like, what do you want to do? And you said that you wanted to make games.
I wanted to make games. And well, so I started at Lucas. I was first in the online department, and I didn't join early as I think my favorites of the group, although I got lucky to be friends with Tim Schafer because of random happenstance mostly. In time, I joined the online team as a coder person. Like, I was a producer. I would code and help get the websites up, and I would help run in and out. It was just the lightest, simplest job. And then I'd write for StarWars.com. I wrote an article that I pitched. That was probably my favorite piece I ever wrote for StarWars.com, which was Letters from the Front. And it was Civil War style letters, but from the Battle of Hoth. It was a blast. It was one of the more fun things I've ever written. But I wanted to get into games. And slowly at Lucas, it kind of became this thing where it was obvious they had a demand to only have one games team or one or two games teams. And it was a nightmare to get anything greenlit. But I was in a weird place because I worked in online. And so I took advantage of the fact that no one really knew what I did for a living. People didn't understand the internet in 2010. It wasn't a thing. Like, the internet wasn't a thing to the average person at that point. It was, they went on an occasion. You didn't really do websites. People didn't spend hours on Facebook. Facebook and Twitter were just getting going. I know because I was part of the group that registered that. I built the social media policies for the Lucasfilm companies. So I went, hey, Lego Star Wars is coming out. I have an idea for a website. What if we did a game? And I pitched this idea that was kind of getting popular, Advergame. And it was an MMO in browser, and I got a team to build it, and I got to lead a team and creative direct because no one knew what I was doing. Like, they didn't have a concept around it, to the point there was some hilarious technical stories around that. My favorite part is it basically was an MMO. If you go look Lego Star Wars 3 website beta, that was a lot of the videos sort of use that title on YouTube. It was basically Lego Star Wars, 10 people at a time, instanced MMO, running around with swords, and you could collect all the different characters. And they let me build it in their mind as an ad, but it ended up winning a Webby for Best Online Game that year. I was really proud of that work. And that got me a chance to sort of move into having my own games team, which I did for about a year before my game got canceled. As did a lot of people's, including everyone at the companies. Our games got canceled because they were selling to Disney, and they wanted to clear out some of the cobwebs, and that's the way it works.
I think that's something that people who aspire to get into the game industry don't know about it, is you're going to be looking for another job fairly often.
Yeah.
Like, games get canceled, studios close down. Just be prepared for that.
Yeah, it's I mean, the life cycle of a developer is 2 years unless the project goes long. And then as soon as the project's over, everyone, unless you're at one of the fortunate studios that doesn't do this, which is not a lot of them, there's a lot of people that they're like, okay, cool. Well, now we've got a break and we're going to, off you go. Or if you're lucky, they move you to a new studio within the same company and you can continue work. But it's a challenge at smaller studios. And LucasArts, despite being part of Lucasfilm, really was a smaller studio that was very singular title based, focused on that sort of every 2 year cycle. And it's why every 2 years we had sizable layoffs, done very poorly, but sizable layoffs. And ultimately they closed the company.
So we've got some questions before we move on in this conversation. There were some questions in the chat. Somebody wanted to know how they can look at your Steam profile.
I will post it in our Discord, so you can look at me and make fun of me or try to friend me. I won't add people generally. I tend to be very hesitant because I get very aggressive during Dota, and I would really be sad if I ended up being known as someone who gets toxic. I do in Dota. It's the only game I get really toxic in. But I'll post it in the Discord, and so you can take a look.
I'll make sure that it gets onto our Twitter too. And then somebody else wanted to know if you worked on Day of the Tentacle.
No, I did not. Although I
freaking love that game. That's one of my favorite games.
The thing that was amazing with the push to Monkey Island is there's a guy behind it named Craig Derrick, who I have to continually give credit for because his entire thing has been trying to bring back those old titles. He called it the Heritage Project. And when he got the first Monkey Island done, which was originally done sort of as a test, and he found a way to sort of work it in, and it sold its numbers. And then he got to do Monkey Island 2, and it sold decently. And then he's actually the guy who pushed through Monkey Island 3 that's being released, I think, in just a week. But he pushed the remasters of Day of the Tentacle and all of these things. And it's been sort of wonderful to watch all of those, as we called them, heritage projects get made and see Craig get really successful. I was not there. No, I left right before the remake, and I was there, sadly. My first project really there was a game called Fracture or The Force Unleashed, which Force Unleashed was pretty good.
I played OG Day of the Tentacle. That was
I did when I was in high school. Like I was in high school. I'm not that old, although I appreciate the community presuming that I'm a little older than I am. I know I look it sometimes.
Okay, so moving on, let's talk about some of your other hobbies besides games. You are starting to learn how to do a bunch of different things. Like you're starting to branch out into what is it, theremin?
Yeah, I got a theremin.
Yeah, those things are freaky. Like,
it's super fun.
You play it like this.
It's a big thing for me is anything that is a very analog instrument, but also digital. Like that hits a sweet spot for me. I mean, it's, again, Nor is a big push where I'm trying to find ways to bring what I would say is analog emotions into a digital space. And that's a thing that has been a running theme throughout my entire career, is finding that crossover. And the theremin, modular synthesizers, same thing. I've got my Moog Mother 32 and my DFAM that I've hooked up to my theremin. Anyone who knows those things knows that I am just a beginner, but it's a blast. And I have a super fun time sort of just messing around and being able to relax as I sort of create music. And it's a really fun thing.
I've only ever known one other person who had one and played it. I mean, I know like Jimmy Page used it back in the day with Led Zeppelin, but I've only ever known one person who had one and like used it on stage.
It's not a common instrument, we'll say.
No,
but it is
freaky. But
it's fun. For me, again, the analog side of it allows a great range of play for me. I grew up playing the saxophone, drums, piano, at one point the clarinet, soprano sax, bunch of instruments. I learned the guitar a little bit, but nothing really ever struck me. Drums did. I love the drums, but of
course you would.
Oh yeah, but the theremin, like theremin and this kind of musical production, things in that range, tomophone, anything that sort of lets you have that I don't really know what's going to come out, but I'm allowed to experiment thing, is why I love it, and the experimentation's the enjoyable part. I recommend modular synthesizers. Yeah. It's an expensive fuck hobby, I don't have a lot of them, and I think over time I'll end up spending far more money than I want to. But it's a hell of a hobby. Beyond that, my sort of real passion in life, beyond just playing video games, beyond theremin, probably even actually I'd say my number one thing I actually do that I really enjoy is critical theory and reading, philosophy. It's been a thing for about my entire life. Got into it in high school. Not necessarily good writers, but writers, until a high school teacher introduced me to real philosophy and also some Eastern stuff and some more odd things. Really taught me about Plato, sat me down, taught me about the Tao Te Ching, a little bit of Kant, a little bit of Hegel, and then I sort of spent the next 20 years picking up a book here, a book there, until I have the nightmare behind me that you see of, and this is just one set of shelves, and there's more above, and then there's another entire set that's just filled with trying to understand how meaning is made, which is literally what all of these books generally that I have are about. New one I picked up that's sitting here is a book on riddles, Untying the Knot. It's a story of sort of how riddles have worked over time, how they operate socially, how we play with them, because they're not the same as skill games or trivia. Riddles have very particular answers that are almost like a code, the same way you see in like a spy movie, where the turkey flies at midnight. Oh yes, but is the soup warm in December? Is like kind of how the spy joke goes, but that's actually how riddles work, because someone says a thing and then you have a very clever answer, but it has to be phrased a certain way. And that in and out group that is created through that, this is the stuff I love. There's a reason I have books on it. There's a reason I have books on all of these things, is how do we find meaning in literally everything we do? Mostly focused around the philosophy of Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, French guys who, as our lovely head of writing, you can ask about, decided to make a joke in my biography, which is fine. I'll leave it in the white paper. Their piffle, as he calls it, are some of my favorite books ever written, and the philosophers and thinkers around them. Bergson, who's phenomenal and very underrated, Georges Bataille, Michel Serres, all of that tends to be where I end up. Sierra Kremen's a very specific one I want to mention, because people who like games, it's a very accessible way. Her book, under her dead name, Colin Kremen, she never changed that, don't know why, is probably my favorite book on video games, and it's about Mario and how Mario makes meaning and feel and sensation, and it's really great.
That's just a lot of thinking. You know, in my free time,
it's painful.
I watch
I know.
Swamp People on YouTube.
It is. It's a lot, and I know it's one of those things that I've been able to find a way for me to sort of study it. I founded this group, the DGQC, which is my sort of second Nor, like, because the Nor Discord everyone knows I live in. That's because I'm also living in a second Discord at the same time, so I kind of get to bounce between them and always seem online in both. But it's a 3,500 person philosophy server. I founded. It's where people just discuss these ideas and talk about them, and it's been a big sort of thing for me to be able to collect people who are postdocs, real scholars on some of these guys, and they sit on Discord and fuck around, and it's kind of amazing to be able to be part of that and see how they discuss things and all of that. And so I've been fortunate to sort of use that as I sort of study and get into all these things.
We've talked about, or you've mentioned, that you could start, Brooks's bookcase or bookshelf thing in our Discord, and like maybe read some philosophy, have philosophy discussions. So people who are listening to this stream, or if you're watching it later, please leave a comment and let us know if that's something that would be interesting to you.
Yeah, we had a couple of people say that it would be interesting, and I'm very down for it. It's not that I'm not. It's I want to make sure that enough people like actually give a shit, because it's not a small amount of time or brain power, and I want to make sure that it's useful. Because again, I think most people, for now at least, especially as we're getting the white paper out there, the big point is to sort of discuss the white paper. Like you and I, in the next day or two, we're going to be popping into Discord and saying, hey, let's talk about what's in that white paper, and just dump people information. After that's over, being able to, again, continue that weekly cadence, I think is important, and I want to figure out what we can have in there. because I really like talking to people in there. We have a really, really amazing community at this point.
We do some really just heart of the community folks. I would mention some by name, but then I would forget somebody and feel bad about it.
Well, I can mention one because I just spent time, a very casual but directed conversation with Animositas. I did Annie's last weekend. It's worth taking a look through. It was far more casual, but also we got to some really, really hard points. A lot of those sort of meaning of life questions in there too. And it was 2.5, I think 3 hours we just went, and it was intense, and it was very good.
I will make sure to share the link to Annie's YouTube page, because he doesn't just talk about Nor. He talks about a lot of, different projects in this space, Web3, that sort of stuff. So he's definitely somebody that everybody should get acquainted with. Follow his channel. His stuff is amazing. So yes, thank you. Yes, he's worth a special shout out.
Yeah.
All right. So starting your own company, were you high?
Yes.
What in the hell were you thinking?
Well, I was a little bit during that, but no, it's one of the things you said. I've always wanted to get into game design. When I was at Lucas, I fought my way into trying to be a creative director, and the guy who's currently like the head of narrative for the Halo series, Halo Infinite, Joe McDonough. I really didn't give up wanting to get into game design, and I frustrated the shit out of that poor guy. I know I did. He was very kind to me. And at one point he stopped me and he's like, "You're like a fucking dog with a bone. Like, I will not let it go." Over time, I think since then, because that was a decade ago, I've softened on that because I started to see how these things needed to be. I want to make my own games, and I'm going to get there. But the problem is that the kind of games I want to make and the kind of people that I want to see make games don't have the power to make the games they want to make. And it's across the board. Some brilliant, including Joe, everyone I know who's a great game developer has these ideas that they have a brilliant idea and then they try to work it back into a business model that simply doesn't allow the game to stay the way that they want it to, and it's compromising. And I started to learn, and I really learned it at Lucas, I think harshly, that you can be that creative guy, but then you're at the whim of whoever the fuck's in charge. Or you can find a way to become that guy in charge and empower people who are better at it than you are. And I can find out a way to be a game designer afterwards. And I think that's the route I've ended up taking. When I worked for James Cameron, my job, I was vice president. I was not a small guy. I was not small in that totem pole. Jim doesn't hire a lot of people full time. It was a big deal, my position there. And it gave me a chance to be that person, to find the right developers. And I did not take it lightly. The team at Ubisoft, and I was not a big fan of Ubisoft at the time, a lot of the games they were doing, but the team at Massive Studios, under the tutelage and leadership of David Pofelt, Pither Sidau, and Soundboy, they're some of the more, and the entire team, I know I'm leaving out a lot of names, it's just the three that I got probably the closest with. They're exceptional talents at making games, just beyond words. And it was this moment that it clicked for me that, like, now that I've worked my way into being that person who can choose who the great developers are, I can have the power to force a contract to be a certain way. I can force a business model that I think is better for the game, that doesn't allow X or Y inside of it. And it was positive. And I when that Avatar game comes out, I have every hope that they were able to keep to most of the vision that we had. But it's one of the reasons I also left. Starbreeze came along, gave me that chance to be that person again. And I could push games through. I was in charge of all VR games. I was in charge of partnerships. I did some publishing deals. I speaking of being friends with Tim Schafer, at one point, Tim, they were not in a great place. They needed to finish Psychonauts 2 and didn't have the cash. And I love Tim, and I love Psychonauts, and I love the entire team at Double Fine. And I saw this post somewhere that they were talking about how they were out looking for a publisher and it wasn't going great. And I was just like, hey, you want to talk? And Starbreeze was able to get them through that. Now, granted, Starbreeze ended up falling apart, but getting them through that, helping them get to that final point where Microsoft ultimately bought them and put them in a position to finish the game under their original vision, being able to be a small part of that is like one of my great honors. And that's what a lot of what I see when it came to Nor, and the sort of emotion behind why I wanted to be in charge, because I don't like being in charge. I tell everyone at the company this. I fucking hate
Say it all the time.
I fucking hate it.
All the time.
I hate being in charge because, there's the stress of being in charge. I've handled stress, like all of that. I don't like being in charge because I want to be able to just go create things, and I have a lot of responsibility to make sure everyone's lights are staying on. I have people who depend on me, which is fine. It's frustrating to not be able to be a creative free spirit. But I've been able to hire extraordinarily talented people in every way. And every week, everyone's going to get a chance to meet one of the people I decided to bring in at the founding level. But even beyond that, the people who are like leading our game design team, Mark, people who are leading our artwork, people who are leading our Web3, people who are leading our community, these people who I know have exceptional, sort of not just work ethic, but thought process when it comes to building, who I know can do something great. This is my chance to empower them to do the thing they've always wanted. And as long as I can keep doing my job by keeping that larger ship, build this ecosystem, get this thing in place, we'll end up able to do it for a lot more developers, a lot more creatives, and I think a lot more players. If we can get people to that point, like literally that feels like almost my point of life. Like it's the reason I was here, is doing this project if we can get it out the door.
I think that's something that people often forget. I am not a game designer. I've never had any desire to be a game designer, but I love being part of the video game industry because I enjoy being around those creative people. There are a lot of jobs that are needed to keep a studio going. So if you're an accountant and you're a great accountant and you want to be part of the video game industry, there are accountants needed in the video game industry. And I always try to remind people of that. Don't try to be a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. Like, just be who you are and then try to find a way that you can fit in, not just with video games. I mean, that's the industry that we're in and that's what I'm most familiar with. But any kind of job or career that you want, find a way to put your skills to work in that. So that being said, what have been the biggest challenges and surprises that you've had now that you are the captain of the ship?
I think the hardest part and the best part is, honestly, this is going to come out weird. It's the moments where we don't deliver what I promised. And I say it's also the best and the worst because when we make a promise, and I make a promise to the community and we don't meet it, or we don't couch it correctly. Let's take recently the white paper. Wasn't communicated right that we were going out weekly. This is a thing internally we've known for a while. It just slipped through. We didn't spend time. We didn't make it clear. We didn't talk about it. It was dumb of us. It was dumb of ultimately me, because that is where the buck fucking stops, especially as someone who's really the person who talks to the community the most. So it's the hardest part is sort of shouldering that and having that moment where it's like, I take serious, and you can tell them this is true. Every fucking comment in Discord and Twitter, I take very to heart. I don't have a system in me where I can just go, oh, the community thinks X. Never had that, never will. It's not how I ran the Twitter for Lucas. It won't be how I run things here. So everything matters. And that sucks emotionally. Trust me, that sucks emotionally. But at the same time, it's the fact also that I believe we can lead forward a way where when I was running Lucas, the thing I kept telling people of what social media is supposed to be is having a real, authentic conversation with your community. That's what social media was meant for, at least what I told people and what I was told. And
that's why they call it social engagement.
It's meant to be this authentic moment.
Yeah.
And so those mistakes I'm able to own and go, look, I fucked up. Let's talk about how can I make this better? How can we do this better next time? And we're able to sort of test and adjust. And that entirety of that moment, I think, is overall a very positive learning thing. What we're trying to do here and how we're doing it, the community we have, every aspect of it is not how this is done by anybody. How we should have done all of this is we should have gone around and bought probably 10,000 bots, done a series of contests, No, we should have. We should have done a series of contests where if you got 10,000 likes or followers, you would be the person who'd be whitelisted. And if you got X number of people to follow us and mention us in your thing, you'd also be whitelisted, and boost all of our numbers to these insane levels and sell a bunch of people, get people excited, then have the whole thing not be worthwhile afterwards. But we would have probably made more money up front. We wouldn't have had any expectation. Instead, we've been deeply open kimono. We've not done any of that. We've done only earned everything. We fought it because I hate that shit. I hate it, and I'm in charge, so I get to say no, we're not doing that. I fucking hate that stuff.
I hate that too. As long as I have taco money and a roof over my head, I'm happy.
And so for me, it's like the ability to have that type of community engagement, and the fact that our community. Now, I'm not saying I don't want people to. I want people to turn on me. Like, that's not it. But like in crypto, having a community that's negative ever is verboten. Fuck off. It's FUD. Don't come in here. Eat shit. Go away. And it's not that I want everyone to tell me I'm an asshole and that we're terrible. That would be sad. But people being able to be negative in our space, having people go back and forth and sort of massage it, not telling them, get the fuck out of here, which is very much what I normally see, but being like, hey, be cool. And I'm like, no. And it's like it's an honest engagement with people. That moment is like, every time that happens, I'm like, yes, we fucked up, but I built the thing I wanted to. Like the machine that is Nor at large, which is the company, the group, the way we're seen, the community, everything, this large machine that is my responsibility to keep oiled, is responsibility to keep going. And yes, it breaks down on occasion, but my job to keep it going. And when I see that type of interaction, I'm like, fuck, I did it right. Like, we're going to learn, we're going to make mistakes. I'm going to continue to screw up. You guys are going to be mad at me for things, but every time it's like, hey, look, don't do that again. They know I'm serious. They know I make good on it. In the past, when we fucked up, I've made good on it. We've made changes. We've had conversations, and they're like, oh, well, like, good. And it's like, that is the machine we need. We need that. And it makes me feel really proud that like I was able to do that. I guess it's weird to say because it feels like, the best version of it is the Instagram reality where we're all using, filters on our faces and you don't see any of the warts or the wrinkles and everything's perfect and everything's gorgeous and we're perfect in every single way ever. And we have 10 million followers, except we only have 300 likes and weird. We have 10,000, we have 10 million people who are into our project, but we have 200 views on YouTube. Like we have the size of community we have, and we have good engagement with people who I think care about the vision and treat me like a person, and I hope I treat enough like a person, and we're going to find a way to do this. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of that part of it because it's, to me, the hardest thing to do. And we've got a lot of hard things to do, but that's like the hardest thing to do when you start one of these.
One of the things that I appreciate about the community that we have, well, mostly in Discord, because that's where I live every day, they may have negative comments. They may disagree with something, but it's not personal. I got hate mail from back in the day when I was working on something else that the company was based in Iceland, and I got hate mail that said, if Iceland had trees, I would tell you to go hang yourself. Now, that made me laugh. Just so you know, like you write some angry, I will send a strongly worded email. They usually make us laugh. Well, they make me laugh.
It depends.
But then I have to look and see what they were upset about.
No, and when I was at Lucas, I got death threats all the time. I'll never forget that one time someone, like the first time I let someone else log into the account and it was like opening up and Twitter was not just doing one person, one thing. They saw the messages that like I had read and not replied to, and they freaked the fuck out. They were like, why aren't you calling the police? And I was like, why? Like what? It was like death threats all the time. And I'm like, oh, they're just being assholes. Like it's just assholes. I get assholes.
Usually it's like
that's 4chan stuff. But that's the thing. This is the reason that this Discord hits me is it's not 4chan bullshit like some random trolls coming in. I've talked to almost every person on our server at least one-on-one or made a comment or had conversations around them. And so it is very much everyone's a person to me. Now, granted, I don't know your face. You're all anonymized, and some of you are lizards or fucking bunnies or fucking seekers or whatever are sort of hilarity of the mishmash.
Shrimps.
All the things that we've got, like that stuff is like, you're still like an organism, a human. and it's really great for me.
With the benefit of hindsight, and now the Consortium 9 just celebrated its 1-year anniversary.
Yeah, we did.
So you've been running this company for a year now, in stealth mode mostly. So with the benefit of hindsight and a year under your belt, what would you do differently? And this is like, if somebody else is thinking, hey, I would like to get into this space, what are the best things, worst things?
I would probably be a little bit, I would be careful about how you consider what you're getting into. Because for me, I thought I had a lot more guidance, and I think a lot of people were seen to have a lot more expertise. I think if you look at the last 3 years of ETH or NFTs or the world of crypto, or even the last 10 years, if you go all the way back to later Bitcoin sort of extravaganza days, what you find is that there's a lot of people who claim expertise. And I think I would disregard the idea of expertise flatly in this space by everybody. I think people have a better handle on it than others, but expertise is something that I've been able to experience in other industries. A person, for example, in VR who has expertise when it comes to hardware development spends time talking about how the third eye operates and how very specific PPD settings do X, Y, and Z, and they think of these things in those terms. We don't really have that. There's a handful of engineers who talk about parts of it, a handful of designers who talk about parts of it, a lot of business people and marketing people who talk about it. But I think the idea of expertise is less there, and I think you'll see that in the projects, in my mind, that end up doing the best are the people who very openly talk about this as if it's a learning. Like they're learning. They're doing their best. They're adjusting. You are clacky as shit, Val.
I'm sorry. I was asking if people had questions because we're going to be winding down.
Yeah, no, it's people don't have expertise. This shit's too new. I made this joke early on, and I will continue to. I wish I had said this to myself seriously when we first started this. When I was on stage at VRLA, one of the things that actually got me death threats from VR community people is someone asked me and said, because it was a panel, it was a bunch of people who were experts and visionaries of VR, which, granted, fortunate to be on stage. Thank you very much for the honor. But they were like, what would you say to someone who's new to VR? And I'm like, I've been doing this for a fucking year. What are you talking
like me?
There's no such thing as a veteran in the space. The veterans I wouldn't even necessarily listen to in VR because they did shit 20 years ago and that shit didn't take off. So maybe we take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. The idea of experts, I think, is a thing that people need to start moving past and starting to actually discussing what is a project producing, what is a person making, what are they building, what is the ideas they're having, and engage those things. There's a cult of celebrity across everything that happens in our country and in our world. And I think that would be a thing I would do away with earlier, because as I've learned, the people who are the best allies in this space of the extremely, what I would even maybe say close to expertise, the people who know their shit, who have been in and out or in every room when major decisions are made or built a thing. Every time I talk to those people, they're busy working. They're good. They know their shit and they're ready to talk about it. But even they don't want to talk about expertise. They don't want to tell you how it's done. They want to advise how they understand it. And those are the people to listen to. When they say, look, this is where I think this is happening. This is what we're trying now. This seems to be the next thing that's working. Those are the people that this is the biggest chain. This is going to be the biggest chain that's ever existed. Any declarative statements. It's Abraham Lincoln, the less declarative statements one makes, the less one is apt to look foolish in retrospect. And I think that's a big lesson in all spaces, but for sure here, I wish I'd known that sooner.
So Tom Hatton from the YouTube chat stream said, how long-term is your vision with Nor? We weren't really going to focus on Nor today,
no.
Hey,
It's
Tom asked a question.
This is the last thing I'm doing when it comes to games and entertainment. I think after this, if it's not successful, that's going to be sad. I'm going to go open a food truck. If it is successful, how wonderful. I'm doing it forever, and I'm also going to go open a food truck. I got nothing else. Like I got nothing else.
What's your I know that you like to cook. So what's your signature dish?
No, we have ideas, and we know how we're planning for this to go literally for the next 5 years, and that's a start. Right. We have a 10-year vision of it. The focus right now is for the next. How I do 5-year plans personally. My brother taught me this. I don't know where he got it. Someone smarter than him, no doubt. Is you don't plan for 5 years. What you do is you make where you want to be in 5 years. You figure out what it takes to get there halfway. And then you make that a note and you make that a mark. So at 2.5 years, you need to be X. Halfway there, where do you need to be? In order to be able to tell where you need to be, you metric it out and you give yourself those goals. And we know where we want to be next week. We know where we want to be tomorrow. We know where we want to be a year from now, 6 months from now, 3 months, 2.5 years, 5 years. And we do know beyond that. Our vision is, again, I want to change all of fucking gaming. And if I can do that, I'm happy. Yeah, but,
I still want to hear about the food truck though, just because it's almost dinner time where I am.
It's an easy thing. I cook. I was a shitty chef at a shitty restaurant. I cooked a lot in a lot of different restaurants. I fucking love cooking. It's like my favorite thing to do for the family. I cook almost all of our meals. And if I had to pick like a favorite thing to cook, it's going to end up being probably sous vide duck roasted over a fire. If you can do it properly, you know, it's a day-long duck sous vide after you've already done a marinade, and after then you put it on a big, 1,200 degree fucking burner as hot as you can get those coals. I have a big green egg, so I kind of go nuts, and you just crisp the hell out of that thing. It's great. It's good. It's very good.
That sounds awesome. We have a channel in our Discord called SBK Bar and Grill where we talk about food all the time. So if you are a foodie,
we do love the foods.
Yes, and one of our community members, Stilty, is actually a professional chef.
A very good one,
so
too.
We're always picking his brain about stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions I have. Was there something else that you wanted to say before we...
No, a little mini story sort of to end it, because it's you mentioned stuff on my desk and it came to mind. We're taking our time, and I know the community is very patient with that, but there's a reason for that. Someone said to me last night, they're like, hey, I'm a measure twice, cut once kind of person. And I'm like, I wish I could only measure twice. It's the kind of thing, and everyone in the founding group, everyone who works here, we're people who go over things ad nauseum. For me, my grandfather, so he was a coal mining family, West Virginia. We'll just say didn't grow up well. Ended up working at Martin Marietta as an engineer, without any college degree. It's a good story. Was a good guy. And the thing I have of his, he passed a while back from lung cancer, is this thing. This is a little drawing he made called The Last Revision, and it's how he felt about everything he does. Now, see The Last Revision? Because you're dead. That's the last revision. That's it. You're always ready to make another revision, always ready to make another change, make it a little bit better and a little more perfect. He taught me that a long time ago, and then I had it beaten into my fucking head by James Cameron and the team at Lightstorm and how they view things. Jim takes a fucking decade to make a sequel. There's a reason. He does not like having half measures. He doesn't like having 90% there. It is whatever's insane makes the thing. And it's one of the reasons we're slower. And I appreciate the community sticking with us and appreciating that speed. We will get faster with it as things hit. We're at that stage where everything we do is so long term. Shit we put in this white paper, we can't change. We don't want to. We could change everything next week, like whatever, it's just text, but we can't. Like if we change things, it shifts everything, and we need people to see what we're building, the pieces and how they play together. And so everything needs to be perfect. And it's,
and that's another reason for the incremental release of the white paper, which is quite a departure from how it's usually done. That give it in bite-sized pieces so that everybody has a chance to read it, absorb it, ask their questions, discuss it with us.
Yeah, but
I
it's
think that's really important.
specifically around when we talk about tokenomics, when we talk about how things actually work economy-wise, and we're getting there. We're explaining all the pieces of the chessboard, but we're not explaining the values, the value of moves, the value of captures, what these things are. That's the mechanics of chess beyond moves. That's the thing that comes through tokenomics. There is legal requirements. There is a lot of them. There are requirements from a design process. There are technical requirements depending on what chain we land on and how we end up building. And again, we don't want to be changing these things. Once we start, we're going, because we don't want to revisit any of this. We want the revisions to be done. And so we need to hit that point. And it's, again, I wish we had communicated it better. I feel it. Trust me, I've been feeling it ever since the day that landed. But I'm very happy with, I think, how this is going to turn out and what kind of conversations we're going to start having this week, next week, the week after, especially as people meet the team, especially as we start revealing some of the larger stuff, you know, what the 9 do, as an example. Really fun things that are really great narrative elements and really fun from a story perspective, but intensely powerful from a metagame perspective. Because that's the thing, is we're designing a metagame, and no one does that. Usually design a game and then the metagame is emergent. So it's fun, but it's a lot. And so last revision. It's anytime we fuck up, that's the thing.
Okay, so speaking of conversations, you and I were chatting earlier. We're going to find a time either tomorrow or Friday where we will go into the Nord Discord in the white paper channel, answer some questions, have some conversations about things that people want to talk about from the white paper.
We may just hang out and have a good time. If no one has a ton of questions, I may sit and play video games.
There's a ton of questions.
I know there's a lot I know there's a lot. Don't worry. I know there's a fuck ton of questions.
And then tomorrow we will also announce the date for our next AMA. So, and that will be all about Nor things.
That'll be all Nor stuff, and there's already,
Nor stuff.
I have no doubt Sunny already has a Google Doc with all of those questions still going, waiting for more and more and more. We should just have like a fuck ask me anything. We should just have a Brooks reads and answers every question in a Google Doc and just burn through it. Spend 6 years of my life answering questions.
No, that was a joke, folks. We're not really going to do that.
No, we're not doing that. Holy shit. No, we're not doing that.
Always a pleasure to talk with you, Mr. Brown.
Always, always, always very good.
I hope that people have enjoyed this. Please leave feedback in the comments. You know, like I said, we're at least doing several more of these because we'll be talking with the heads of the different teams. But if there's questions that you have, if there's somebody specific that you want to hear from, if you have recommendations for how we can do better, we're always
listening. We're always listening. And I'm always in there. If I'm not necessarily answering, I took a few days off this last week so I could just decompress. But generally speaking, I'm in there 20 hours a day. So talk.
And please subscribe to our channel if you haven't
Please
already.
like and subscribe.
Please.
Yes. No. Click.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got to do the YouTube thing.
Give us a thumbs up.
Hey, give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Go ahead and click that bell so you can be notified the next time that a video comes out. It really helps us in the algorithm. Thank you so much.
All right, follow us on Twitter. All those things.
We'll see you. Goodbye.
Bye.